see so many of you joining us today. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes just to let the last few people join in. But it's absolutely brilliant to see you this morning. We have day 2 of our Wellbeing Week, hosted by Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes Chambers of Commerce. We're happy to welcome Dominic Greenwood from HR Solutions. HR Solutions are our main sponsor for this week of Wellbeing Week, which is brilliant. Thank you so much for their support. So Dominic is going to be presenting the ChamberLIVE Mental Health Awareness, and I'm just letting the last few people in. How are you all feeling this morning? Are we all good?
Yes, thanks. Are you?
Yeah, very well.
Good.
Bit of a little tiny technical problem, but that's okay. We overcome it. I could do with a meditation now from yesterday, but that's okay. Lovely to see you all. Okay, so we are recording the session, and so we, just to let you know that we are recording, and we can share this with any of you guys who maybe have to, drop out or duck out for any reason, and it will also be available to our other members as well. So without further ado, I think we've got everybody here. I'm going to pass over to Dominic.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Can I have a thumbs up from somebody? Okay, I've got loads of thumbs up. So thank you for joining this webinar in partnership with Northamptonshire Chamber Mental Health Awareness. Just a little bit about me, really. That's me. My role with HR Solutions is a Senior Health, Safety and Environmental Management Consultant. Very long title there. But my background really is 25 years in the leisure and fitness industry, managing health and fitness clubs, leisure centres, outdoor pursuit centres. And then over the last 10 years, really, as Group Head of Compliance, Quality and Safety for a fitness network across the UK called the Energy Fitness Group. I joined HR Solutions back over the summer, and have since been kind of building a health and safety and training department to support businesses really nationwide, but obviously in and around our area, which is based around the Kettering area. And what HR Solutions really does is provide outsourced expert HR and HSE support on a consultancy basis for the workplace. And we look at things like payroll, recruitment, project management, safety training, employment law, and the list goes on, really. So that's just a bit about really what we do as a business and what I do as well. I'm just going to flash our agenda up for today. With the first point really is just talking loosely around what mental health is. It's very much an introduction. We haven't got too long together today. And I'm going to show you towards the end of the webinar different places you can go for further information and different training we can offer as well. So what is mental health? An introduction. We're then going to talk about the role of a mental health first aider. And so some of you may already have that within your workplaces. Others of you may be a mental health first aider, and some of you may not know what that is. So we're going to broach what a mental health first aider actually is in the workplace. What various roles and responsibilities that person will have within the workplace. And then just generally the impact of what mental health is. And it's obviously quite a hot topic at the moment. We're hearing more and more about it with regards to the situation we all find ourselves in. And again, the number of high profile celebrities and sports stars and actors and pop stars that unfortunately have got adverse mental health issues as well. What is the stigma around mental health? And there are a couple of different stigmas, and we're going to sort of broach that as well today. Different risk factors of mental health. And then there's going to be a page towards the end, which is about useful links and various different signposting places you can go to get more information, not only for yourself, but for family members, friends, but also in the workplace as well. There's a number of different places you can get information. And then should you wish to attend any further training, there are some delegated courses coming up that we're running. And again, a future webinar towards the end of the week that we're running again in partnership with the Chamber. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next, how long have we got now? 54 minutes, there or thereabouts as well. If I can get you to turn your mics on to mute, it would be brilliant, only because there's loads of people on the webinar today. And again, I do encourage people to ask questions. I think Kate's going to field those towards the end, and more than happy to take questions. If for any reason I can't answer those at that time, I am going to give you my email address, phone number and contact details. So I'm more than happy to take questions over email and or have a conversation with anybody that wants any further advice, training, or if there's just anything we can do to help. I'm hoping that's okay. Can I have another thumbs up from everybody? Brilliant, I like that. Okay, so what actually is mental health? Well, mental health includes our emotional, psychological and social well-being. I think most of us would probably know that. But I think it's important to talk about the way it makes us think, feel and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress. Also helps us how we interact with other people, whether that be at home, whether that be with friends, in a social situation or in the workplace. And I think it's important to talk about and just identify the fact that it's there from a very early age of our lives, through childhood, through our teenage years, and then obviously through to adulthood as well. And I don't think we really broach it oftenly when we're that young, and it only really often comes to a head when we have different triggers throughout maybe our teenage years, maybe in our early years in work as well. I think it's important to note that everybody's got mental health, and it is quite a buzzword at the moment. I think it's always had some adverse stigmas around it, and I think it's great that we're now broaching it. You guys are on the webinar today, and I think over the last number of years it's been far more high profile, often for the wrong reasons, which is a shame because it's brought to the forefront. Which brings us on to mental illness, and obviously we've all heard of that before. It covers a very broad range of problems, some of which we're going to talk about today, quite a number of which we're going to kind of try and broach on Friday, which is when the next webinar is, and really trying to link those back to the workplace. But it can involve different problems or changes to people's thoughts, emotions, behaviours and relationships with other people. Mental illnesses are associated often with distress or potential problems. They often have a trigger, and you'll have all heard of things like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which again, it's a bit of a buzzword, but it just means it's a life event or a tragic event that can just key into someone's mental health and make them think, feel or act in a certain way. It does and can change people's relationships, whether it be socially, with friends or family, whether it be in the workplace, and whether it's just the relationship that person has with themselves. And I think that's important to note, that we all have a relationship with ourselves. We all think and feel a certain way about ourselves, and mental health and adverse mental health or mental illness can often make us think a different way about ourselves. Mental illness is treatable. Many people live a very successful life, whether you measure success within your work and how much kind of profile you have in your career, whether it's money, whether that's socially and or in relationships. People can live very, very successful lives with mental health and can control it. But unfortunately, we know other people can struggle. And the last point there really is even the most successful people can have mental health issues. And I think it's really important to note that despite someone's success, fame or fortune, and we've often seen it over recent months with high profile stars, unfortunately, having mental health issues, and that then becoming a very tragic and fatal event within that person's lives, and the effect that can have on their family as well. So I think if we can broach mental health, whether it be in the workplace, in our family groups, in our social situations, we've got a far better chance of helping that person who may just be thinking and feeling in a different way to the way we think and feel, or the way we think and feel about that person. So first aid for mental health is a training course. There's a number of various different training courses available for mental health first aiders in the workplace, but it's generally geared around the initial support that person who's experiencing mental health may or may not need in the workplace. And the aims of the first aid for mental health support person would really be to preserve the life where a person could be in danger to themselves or others. And that can be to a lesser or more degree, depending on what mental health issues that person in the workplace has. But it doesn't need to be just in the workplace. It could be where you socially go. It could be if you're involved with a club. It could be if you have children that are in a club or go somewhere socially. You may see or speak to somebody that you feel has got a mental health issue. It could be that we can try and stop their suffering by giving them some kind of immediate comfort and support. And again, if we just think about this back in the workplace, that could be just talking to somebody. It could be providing them with some links to where they can go and get some further support. It could just be checking in on somebody on a daily or weekly basis if you know that they're at home and they're not either at work or they've had an issue. Can you stop the condition from developing into a more serious problem? And that's often where things can change. There's been some kind of trigger in that person, and it could have been from a life event. It could have been from something that's happened in the workplace. It could be something that's happened many, many years ago. But if we can talk about that issue at that point, can we then stop it from developing into a more serious issue? And then can we promote some kind of good recovery for that mental health sufferer by signposting and obtaining professional support? And I think it's worthy of note to think about that. You know, you guys are on a 1 hour webinar today, and potentially Friday, and even me as a mental health first aid trainer and health and safety professional, there are so many other highly skilled and highly qualified people around that we need to understand our own limitations, whether it's from a safety perspective, whether it's from a wellbeing perspective or a health perspective. There are always going to be other people and other organisations that can offer further support that's probably a lot higher than our competency level. So please don't feel that you need to deal with and take on somebody else's issues. You need to think about your own mental health as well. So the roles and responsibilities of the first aider for mental health really in the workplace would be a central point of contact for anybody experiencing a mental health problem. A number of workplaces now are appointing people to undertake this kind of role, and they call it a first aider for mental health. It's quite oftenly the person that would be looking after things like safety and maybe first aid as well, but it doesn't have to be. It could be that you decide to put yourself forward to be this person, and you'd like to go and have further training to be a mental health first aider. And I absolutely would recommend you speaking to somebody in a senior position or the HR department or whatever your structure would be if you'd like to take that further. You would identify the signs and symptoms of mental health illness within the workforce and or in social groups or your friends and family, and there's a very defined set of signs and symptoms that you're going to look for. But equally, some people don't display any particular signs and symptoms, and it's only because you know those people that you can feel that there's something that's not quite right. You need to be able to start supportive conversations, and again, just often talking to people can make the difference between them having a good day and having a bad day, or them deciding to do something that they shouldn't be doing or following the path that they should be on. So, and when we talk about supportive conversations, it would be asking them questions to find out how they're feeling, and you not taking on their problems and their issues, but you trying to find different ways that you can signpost them to have a positive outcome. A really important point is to listen non-judgmentally. What you're not trying to do is give them the answers to the questions. It's just providing them with different ways and different ways they can be signposted to the outcome. But above all, it's about providing reassurance. And for anybody that's been on a general first aid course, you'll know that one aim of the first aider is to provide reassurance. And often holding someone's hand and just kind of saying, it'll be okay, don't worry, I understand how you feel, these are the options, why don't we have a chat in a few days time, cool, come into the office, let's talk, whatever it might be. That could just be the difference between them actually thinking, oh, I am cared about at work, they do understand what I'm going through, and they're going to try and help me get through this issue. Can you assess the risk of self-harm and if the person is in danger to themselves or others? And I think it's important understanding the spectrum of mental health from a person just thinking and feeling adversely about themselves and or thinking about doing themselves self-harm and or going even further than that and maybe hurting themselves and or other people. And I think this is where there is a very fine line between what you can do as a mental health first aider if that person is in serious danger to themselves and or other people in the workplace or a family group or a social situation. Again, it's understanding your capabilities and competency. You need support from other people, and oftenly that would be services that you would have to contact. But I think it's important to be able to understand the risk of their self-harm and are they a danger to themselves and others. Can you signpost them and encourage professional support? And I think it's really important for all businesses to understand what professional support is in their locality. And certainly if you think about if you was to have any kind of industrial accident or incident at work, would you be able to pick the phone up or contact a local agency to gain some support for people in the workplace that have experienced some kind of trauma? So I think a little bit of homework for everybody to do is to go away and think about who you've got locally, whether it's a Samaritans group, whether it's a charity, whether it's a professional service. What you don't want to be doing at that point is trying to find somebody. You need to have their details to hand. And again, if you've got mental health sufferers in the workplace, you want to be able to give them the right information straight away. Something I think is really important would be to, and part of the mental health first aid as well, would be to reduce mental health stigma. And we're going to cover that in a couple of slides' time. But it's about a culture, and it's about not allowing mental health stigma or any kind of stigma or discrimination to take place in the workplace. And unfortunately, mental health and some of the words used in mental health, which you'll recognise shortly, they are very negative and adverse and can make a person feel and think and behave in a very negative way. So it's really about trying to change a culture in an organisation, should that be the culture that exists, but it'd be the role and responsibility of the mental health first aider to reduce that kind of mental health stigma. And again, linked to the previous point, really, it'd be your role to be able to call for appropriate emergency services if needed. And that could be phoning 999, as we all know, but that may also be a support group. It may also be a counselling service. It may also be Mind, the Samaritans. There's a number of different organisations that you can tap into. And above all, to be confidential, professional, and to treat that person with the utmost care and respect with their issue. As soon as their trust is broken, they probably won't speak to you about the issue again. And equally, it may have a more of a negative and adverse effect on their mental health, should that be the case. So there are a number of different roles and responsibilities for this central person that we are going to call the first aider for mental health. There are others, but these are the main ones that you'd expect to exist, and you need to think about should you wish to be taking on that role within the workplace. So what would the impact of mental health problems be? Well, on a day-to-day basis, mental health can affect many areas of your life, as we've already talked about today, and have an impact on your family, social life and relationships. And quite oftenly, the people that are closest to us may not spot the signs of a family member or friend having a mental health issue. It may be yourself who's going to be trained, have attended training courses, and may have an experience in this that may pick up different signs in that person's behaviour, in their thought process, and some of the actions that they're doing. But it can also have impact on someone's physical health. It can impair their ability to protect and develop themselves physically and obviously mentally as well. And that can then have a knock-on effect to how they interact with other people, but also how they can then continue with their role. And certainly if they are using maybe equipment, dangerous equipment, chemicals, another role that would mean that they could be putting themselves in danger, that could then be a conversation that you may have to have with regards to their role. And again, as an organisation, HR Solutions can help you with that. Equally, you may have your own people that can advise as to how you can adjust their day-to-day responsibilities should you have identified that could be a danger to themselves and or others. So again, linking to that point, obtaining or maintaining a job could be and would be more difficult with the symptoms of a mental health condition. And I think this is unfortunately the continuum or the circle that people suffering from mental health can find themselves in that they want to work, they want to carry on with their job, they want to gain a job, but unfortunately because they're suffering mental health issues, it's very difficult then to present themselves in a way that they can gain a job and equally keep a job should it be reliant on how they come across. And this is often not understood or misunderstood by an employer, and it's a shame that we can't get more kind of senior leadership colleagues, chief executives, MDs on courses like this to understand just how important mental health at work really is. Education, again, studying may be more difficult when living with a mental health condition, and often students don't reach their full and true potential. I think it's interesting to think that quite a number of students and young people are suffering from mental health issues, and that could be from the birth of social media. We all see and hear about things like trolling, where people are their character is assassinated online. Certainly in the world of fame and fortune, that happens quite regularly, but equally even as young as children in their sort of early years, 11, 12, 13, because they're on smartphones and on the internet and chat rooms and Facebook and everything else, they're getting negative comments about themselves, and that can start mental health issues at a very, very early age. I'm lucky enough to have young children. I've got a 14-year-old son, and he regularly comes home and tells me about what some of the comments that other children are saying about people in his class and pictures that are being commented on and things like that. And it just wasn't the case when I was that age. So I think that the pressure on students to be successful, and the pressure on young people to maintain a certain image and profile and be perfect is massive. So certainly if you've got children and or around young people, I think it's important to think about how that could affect them. And I'm getting quite a few nods out there, so I'm assuming we've probably broached that already. So obviously what we can't be doing is locking children away and wrapping them up in cotton wool. But I think it's do you know what your children are actually, we're kind of going into safeguarding a little bit, but it's important. There are some lines that bleed over into each topic, but do you know what your children or your young adults in the family are looking at, and what they're doing and who they're talking to and things like that. And I think it's a fine line by going into your child's phone and seeing what they've been doing, but equally that could be the difference between what they how they're thinking and feeling, and you being able to help them. So again, with students at the moment, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're shortly coming out of the next lockdown 2.0, but I think it's been a really, really difficult time for everybody, to be honest, whether it's in the workplace, people maintaining jobs, being made redundant, companies going under, relationships have really suffered. But also students, they've just gone back to university a couple of months ago. Quite a number of them have been locked away. And now some of them don't know if they're going to be allowed back for Christmas. And I think the mental health in the student population is worse than it's ever been. So I think the pandemic has affected everybody financially, mentally, physically, but also on a mental health basis as well. And again, I'm getting quite a few nods. So I think that's quite important to think about. So on a day-to-day basis, can also affect people's physical health from a work perspective, but also from an educational perspective as well. If we think about driving and more manual and physical tasks, mental health conditions can stop people from driving. We know that But I think it's worth talking about the medications that certain people can be on, and there's a whole range of medications, from the very, very basic to the very, very advanced and what I'd call strong medication that can stop people from doing things due to the side effects that can have on them. And I think that's quite difficult for some people. Certainly if people have been in work and been very active, and maybe have operated machinery or been driving throughout their lives, and then they're then told they can't do that anymore, and they've also got a mental health problem. So it's almost like a double whammy. They then can't continue with what they were doing, but also they're now on medication that stops them from doing some of the things they really enjoy. So it may be that they're behaving in a certain way because of the medication they could be on as well. Parenting and children, mental illness can affect relationships and family life. Children won't often realise why mum or dad are behaving in a certain way, why they're talking differently, why they're arguing, what the constraints, issues or pressure is on the family. You know, again, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she wouldn't understand some of the pressures and constraints that me as an adult I have to do within the workplace and or other situations. So what I'm not suggesting is you sit your 5 and 6-year-olds down to talk about that in its broadest sense, but I think it's worth considering how children would perceive somebody older in the family who's experiencing a mental health issue. So it's not always about the person that's got the issue. It could be on the wider family, older brothers and sisters, and parents as well. And stigma can create barriers for people to seek help themselves. I think a lot of mental health sufferers just won't talk to anybody because they don't think you're going to take it seriously. They think they're going to be made fun of. They'll think you'll say something like, well, you know, man up. No, you'll be fine tomorrow. No, it's not a real thing. I went through that years ago. You'll be absolutely fine. And having done the training course earlier in the year to be a mental health first aid trainer, it was really interesting and really opened my eyes as to kind of a lot of the stigmas that are out there, and certainly in the older generation. You know, the comment that, well, this didn't happen in my day. You know, just grow up, man up, whatever it might be, and it does happen. But just making those comments can have such an adverse and negative reaction to that mental health sufferer. So stigma is a really big one, and we're going to kind of broach that now. What is stigma? Well, it's a set of attitudes and values which obviously are a prejudice, which may lead to discriminatory behaviours. And there's two in the world of mental health. There are two sorts, and I'll flash them both up. There's a social stigma, which would include negative attitudes, discriminatory behaviours that generally society or the community has kind of allowed to take place over the years, and no one's really kind of said, well, you can't say that, because they're not swear words, they're not words that you wouldn't normally use, but they've just got a really negative connotation, and due to that, sufferers of mental health would just react very badly to that. The other stigma would be the person's own self stigma. So this is where people who have mental health problems believe that what is being said about their condition is actually what it is, and so they would agree, and so due to that they don't generally go and talk to people and carry on suffering. And I think if I flash all of these images up, and I'm hoping you can see those, and the first one's interesting. It's an NHS poster, and just some of the language used, you know, crazy, fruitcake, nutter, retard, wacko, lunatic, loony, basket case, bonkers. Just a handful of words that we've all used it, and we probably still use it to this day. The pictures unfortunately go on and get worse. And if we look at the picture of the young, I think it's a young lady in the corner of the room with just the wording around her, it's quite scary, really, and it's very sad to think that that's how that person may feel because of the negative connotations with some of the language that is being used. We've all used it, as I've said, and it's very difficult to get out of that mindset. But even just calling somebody stupid, thick, or you're disturbed, an idiot, if they are suffering from mental health, I just wonder how that would make that person think or feel. And the last picture there with the arrow and the target on the guy's head, with all the different words going in as arrows, you know, I think that's probably how he would feel, because it's almost like an arrow to the head to think that someone's going to be calling him insane or an idiot or stir crazy or stupid or cuckoo or whatever it might be. So it's quite interesting for me putting this presentation together, thinking about just how many negative words there are out there, many of which we probably still use today. And I'd imagine if you wander around your workplaces, you'll probably hear them throughout the day. And as that mental health first aider, can we change that culture? Can we stop that from happening? Because there could be people suffering in the workplace, and just putting up with this kind of language and stigma on a daily basis. Self-stigma, this is where a mental health sufferer would see themselves as their mental illness and not as the person. They're going to think about the language that's been used over the years. Self-stigma, it's internalized stigma that eats away at our self-esteem and self-efficacy. It's like a voice inside our head that tells us that we just aren't good enough. And I think this is often where we think that somebody's maybe got a profile, they've got fame, they're really good at something, but they're constantly battling with themselves to be better. And in the end, that gives them adverse and negative mental health. So self-stigma, and oftenly a mental health sufferer can have both, from stigma that they've seen and heard throughout the community, growing up in the workplace, to self-stigma where they see themselves as something else. And unfortunately, quite a lot of our high-profile deaths over the last number of years, but more recently, this is where this has happened. So what I'd like you to do, I just want you to take 60 seconds really, and I'll let you know when you can kind of stop thinking about it. But I just want you to think about how stigma would make a sufferer feel, and how might you feel if you were a sufferer of mental health. And we're not gonna do anything with this. I just think it'd be quite nice in the middle of the webinar just to take a minute, think about what I've talked about so far in the webinar, but also think about some of the language and some of the words I used in the previous couple of slides. Think about how stigma might make you feel, but also might make people in your workplace feel, should they be suffering from mental health. So I'm just going to give you 60 seconds starting from now. Okay, I think we're there or thereabouts, and I'm not sure if you can see each other, but I can certainly see you guys, and pretty much everybody that I can see was looking very, very pensively and in thought. And I think that was quite a thought-provoking thing for you to do. And I'm hoping that has made you think about maybe your workplace, maybe people that you might know, and some of the adverse effects of stigma around. And it's short exercise, but I think it's quite powerful. Did you find that useful? Any thumbs up at all? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So the effects of stigma, there are a number of adverse effects caused by stigma, which would include fear of disclosing a problem to people because they feel that you're going to be, oh, don't be so stupid. What you turn into a lunatic? You know, you're wacko. Don't talk about that. I've heard that. We've all heard that in the workplace. We've all heard it on the school playground. We've all probably said things as well. People might be reluctant to seek professional support, again, because they may not trust people and they've heard adverse comments. They might feel victimized, harassed, and they could have be bullied. And I think bullying, again, we're kind of going into safeguarding, but there's quite a lot of crossovers. This could then lead to physical violence because somebody isn't the same as somebody else. They think and feel differently, so they get picked on, which, guess what, it makes their mental health a whole lot worse, and then things can slowly deteriorate. Again, we've already talked about it earlier, but difficulties in finding employment and taking part in activities. They become withdrawn. They don't want to talk to anybody. They're worried that they're going to be seen as different. They're worried that they're going to be seen as weak and not get on very well in the workplace and or doing activities. They're concerned that there could be a lack of understanding from their family group. Certainly, if you think about your family, brothers and sisters, there's often quite a lot of rivalry. Certainly, if you've got boys, I've got a couple of those. There certainly is a bit of rivalry, healthy. But if one of those starts suffering mental health, would they really have the ability to talk to the other one and or mums and dads, because they're going to be worried that they're going to be seen as not as good as the other one, not as good as the older brother or sister. They're seen as weak, not successful. So it starts at an early age. And stigmatization, is that developed? Is that already happening? Do we use this kind of language from an early age in our households, in the school playground, in sports clubs? And we know we do. We've all heard it. It's how we break that effect. How can stigma be coped with? No individual should have to tolerate that kind of behaviour. There are some points to help people combat stigma, and professional help would be one of those. We know there are a number of agencies, groups, and trusts around that can help with that. Show your family and friends information. I think it's important to have an open workplace and family. So if somebody is suffering, they can come and say, this is how I feel, and this is what's going on. Because it may be that, and like me, up until more recently, I didn't really understand this, to be honest. And I'd imagine a lot of people don't. We see it in the media, we read about it, and we think, oh no, why is everything about mental health again? But it's a real thing. Don't label yourself. I think there's a number of different mental health issues, and why label yourself with any one of them? And if there's a group that you can talk to and join, it might just help people. So signposting, I think, is really, really important to help people cope with stigma. And local campaigns and or national campaigns. There's, the profile of mental health is elevated due to the situation we're going in. There's a number of high profile TV adverts. There was one centered around men, I think about a year ago, where, I don't know if you can remember, where there was a period of silence on the screen where nobody talked, and it was all about getting the fact over that people don't talk, and it was geared around men. Unfortunately, men between the ages of 18 and 40 are far more, I think it's 60 times more likely to take their own lives due to mental health issues. Mental health risk factors, we've already talked about discrimination and stigma, but social isolation and loneliness is a massive one. And I think at the moment, due to the pandemic, due to lockdowns, due to people not being able to see each other, it's exacerbated massively. Hopefully we'll come out of that soon. The vaccines are being developed, and we're in a far better place than we were. Let's hope Christmas can go on as close to normal as possible. And come next year, things may start returning back to normal, but guess what? They may not. And I think it's worth thinking about how that could affect people you know of who could be self-isolated and lonely. Unfortunately, the effects of abuse, trauma, and neglect are often triggers for mental health. And again, it's crossing over into safeguarding territory, but it's thinking about if somebody doesn't look quite right at work, they're coming in disheveled, any physical signs of abuse, anybody's seen or heard something, that could then have a massive effect on a person's mental health. And it's really in all of our interests to take responsibility and try and just talk to somebody to see what is going on if possible. Obviously, finance, again, at the moment, people unfortunately are losing jobs and are probably not in as good as financial position as they were. So that would be a risk factor linked heavily to unemployment, and if the person has either lost their job or can't get a new job, would also be a risk factor. Physical injury or physical health condition, which could lead the person to have to change their life. They may not be able to enjoy the activities, whether it be sports or work, that they could do before. That will have a massive impact on someone's mental health. Somebody who's been very active throughout their life that then can't be, then often plays a massive part. And again, severe or long-term stress it is a big factor as well. And again, I don't think it's given the accolade it deserves. Again, it's just, oh, well, they're stressed. Stress is a real thing. Is a real thing and can cause not only mental health but physical health as well, and further illness should it not be addressed and combated. Poverty, homelessness. If someone's a long-term carer, that can also cause mental health problems. And I think that it's more about being a long-term carer of a family member rather than being a long-term carer as a career. So if you see a family member declining, maybe you've looked after that person, maybe they unfortunately then die, the mental health issues that will have on you could be very dramatic as well. So it's important that you look after yourself and talk to somebody should you be in that position. Obviously, we've got drug and alcohol abuse, again, exacerbated by the current situation. Often drug and alcohol users suffer mental health conditions as well, and it's purely because that's as a lead on from possible abuse, trauma or neglect, and again can't get employment and or have lost jobs because of it. So there's so many of these that knock on into each other that all result in the same place. Domestic violence, we're back in safeguarding territory, but again will be a trigger. Again, PTSD, trauma from an early age, and that could be abuse or neglect, could unfortunately be sexual abuse as well. An early age could then result in mental health illness in later life, and certainly obviously being in the military and seeing and experiencing things that really nobody should see or experience could then result in mental health later in life. But any traumatic event, from a car crash to an illness to an accident at work, could elicit PTSD, which would then could bring on a mental health illness. And really the death of a loved one, which is always never a situation any of us want to go through, but it happens. It's obviously part of life, but we've all gone through it. And certainly, with regards to the death of maybe an immediate family member, that would then bring on potential mental health risk factors. So if any of those, there's a number there, you're aware of anybody in the workplace is suffering from, and certainly the death of a loved one, or any abuse, neglect or trauma, it's certainly worth a conversation. And if you're going to go down this mental health first aider role, that would be absolutely worth thinking about starting a supportive conversation. There's a number of useful links there. There's more. They're just ones I pulled together for today, that if anybody wants to take a screenshot of that, then it's worth doing. But I think Kate will probably send out the presentation, possibly, or it will be made available for everybody to have a look at. There's a number of groups that people can get hold of. A number of those you'll have already heard of. Mine, the Samaritan's Refuge, I'd imagine you've heard of before, but there's a few others as well, which is quite interesting. I think the Men's Health Forum's very interesting in that there is now a forum for men to talk to other people about, or other men about, what they are thinking and feeling and the pressures they're under, maybe at work or at home. Eating disorders, obviously, rape, alcohol, drugs, homelessness, they're all on there. There is also a text line, which I think is really good. It's called Shout. Certainly worth sending that round. If you're in the workplace, you could put these up maybe on a board, on a staff board. You could include this in a newsletter. It's just about being a responsible employer, and if you're in this role of mental health first aider, then you can give out this information. Obviously the Samaritans is there, and there's the Mind Info line as well, which you can also text. So why don't you make this a common information area that you could just put this up, that if anybody wants to have a look at it, then you could do it. Maybe it could go on your staff internal site, or however you communicate with your staff members. Little plug for our next session is Friday, and it's more about mental health in the workplace. Today was more about an intro to what mental health actually is. but obviously we've got another session on Friday, which is all about mental health in the workplace. What can you do as a mental health first aider? What documents might you need? Policies, procedures, communication to staff, how you can improve staff communication and the culture within that workplace. So more than happy for as many of you to join as possible. We've already got a good contingent, but it'd be great to have a few more. So please, if you'd like to join, do that through the Chamber website, as you did for this one, northamptonchamber.co.uk events/wellbeing week. And should you want some further training, I'd love to welcome you to the Kettering Park Hotel. I've got 2 courses coming up. They are delegated courses, believe it or not, even though we're on a social lockdown. And the reason for that is they are seen as essential. So I've been teaching throughout this lockdown 2.0, a couple of first aid courses, health and safety at work, fire safety, and I've got mental health first aid, a level 2, and a safeguarding level 3 course coming up. The Kettering Park Hotel, great learning environment, COVID secure, socially distanced, purely because there's nobody else there apart from us. So other than key workers that are allowed to stay, we're the only ones that are there because these courses are seen as essential. They are value priced for the time, £99 per course, but if people would like to do both, we're doing them for 180, and that includes everything: refreshments, lunch and parking, all the books and resources, the exam fee and the certificate. So again, would be more than happy to welcome anybody that would like to attend those 2 training sessions. There are areas where they overlap, so I think to do both together, you definitely see an advantage. And certainly if you're thinking about setting up any procedures or practices in the workspace for mental health or safeguarding, then these courses are great, and they are nationally recognised and awarding body registered. So it'd be great to hear from you. If you'd like to ask any further questions, there's my details, the office number, my mobile number, and my email address. More than happy to take questions on an individual basis. Something I do offer is a free 30-minute, I'll call it a chat really, because we can chat about whatever you wish, but safety, health, fire safety, mental health, safeguarding, first aid, workplace and occupational hazards, that type of stuff. More than happy to have a free 30-minute conversation with anybody. Just email me, we can get that booked in and take it further, or just give you some informal advice. We do have a newsletter, which would be great if you could all subscribe to. So stay in the loop and keep up to date with HR Solutions. We do a free weekly newsletter, which keeps you up to date on HR news, health and safety news, industry guidance, different training courses we're doing, any future webinars. We do webinars as well. I've got another one tomorrow on statutory compliance in the workplace, but there's HR ones, employment law, Brexit, you name it, we do one. And again, if you want to sign up to that, it's free, and you get quite a lot of information that you can use back in the workplace and or for yourself. And that kind of brings me, with 10 minutes to spare, to the end of the webinar. I'm hoping you enjoyed it. It'd be great to see some of you on Friday as well. I'm going to hand back to Kate if there's any questions and to find out what we need to do next. So thanks for coming on. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your wellbeing week.
Thank you, Dominic. That was extremely thought-provoking and very informative. Yeah, I'm quite taken aback with how much that I've learned today. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem. It's been my pleasure. Been my pleasure.
Just open the floor to any questions. Just something in the chat that's popped up. Helen said that the 60 seconds was very powerful.
Yeah,
that I completely agree. It was very powerful, and,
yep.
and those words are very just really get to you, don't they? And you're right. I mean, do you know, if I've had a moment, I've referred to myself as a fruitcake.
Yep.
You know, we do beat ourselves up sometimes as well, don't we? So
I think we do. Yeah, and I think you raise a really good point, in that, you know, I was one of these people that use that kind of language, and I think I was brought up by, you know, a dad and a granddad where, you know, I had to be the best I could be. Any point of weakness was seen as a weakness, you know, and I had to play rugby and all this kind of stuff. I really enjoyed doing that, but it wasn't until I went on the course, you know, 6 months ago to be a trainer, and it was a really serious course over a week. and just some of the language that we use, and you actually sit back and think, crikey, I talk like that all the time. And you just don't realize how powerful it is, that language. So, if people don't take anything else from today other than that, go back and, talk to your colleagues, family, friends, do the 60-second thing with other people, because I just think it's a really powerful thing that I thought would not only break up the webinar, but I think it would just be really thought-provoking.
Well, it certainly was. It certainly was. I just like to make a comment on when you said about your 14-year-old and different social media outlets they're on. I too have a 14-year-old girl. She wanted to join Instagram, and I was very hesitant and concerned. So she went on and on and on, and in the end I said, okay, if you want to join Instagram, you need to go away and research all the security settings, and I want a presentation. And she did it, and she learned all about the security features, and she really embraced it. So just to say, she learned lots of things. I now know she's safe, or as safe as can be. So yeah, I was a bit of a mean mum, but I thought it was very important that she knew all the aspects, and then also taught me them as well. But that did make me chuckle. I
think it's just looking after our children. That not only the next generation, they're our children, but we want to embrace the internet, all the different social media platforms. They're great for learning, great for keeping connected at this time. But we just know that there's so many adverse things can happen on there, from trolling to pictures, and just the way that pictures can be manipulated and changed, and they then can be made to look like they're not, and just the mental health issues that can have on a young adult, I think is massive.
It is. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make, or a question or anything like that? Just unmute yourself and please speak to the group. But as Greg kindly offered, Dominic kindly offered that if you do have any questions that you'd like to ask, maybe that they're not for this situation, that he's open to a 30-minute chat, which is really great of him. Thank you for that.
No problem at all.
Okay, so I don't think there's anyone that would like to ask anything. So I think we're going to take this opportunity to close the meeting, to close the webinar. Thank you so much to our chamber partners, silver partners, HR Solutions. Greg's on the call today. Hi, Greg. Thank you to Dominic for this very thought-provoking and informative webinar. Lots of things to take away. And I look forward to Friday's mental health in the workplace event. As I said in the chat, if you'd like to attend and you're not already booked, please just drop me an email or send me a message and I'll get you booked on. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you for supporting Wellbeing Week with us, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Take care.